Hey guys, I'm finally getting around to recording my birth story. So I'll start by saying something that's often overlooked about labor is that while a baby is being born, so is a mom. It's a life-changing experience no matter which way you bring life into this world. It's beautiful, it's amazing, it's miraculous, it's absolutely wild. So every birth is unique, it's like a fingerprint to each mom. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I knew I wanted to give birth all natural with no medication. And one reason is I have always had like really bad reactions to medications, like allergic reactions, rashes, all the things. And I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. Also, my thought behind it was like how all the other creatures on earth, they don't doubt their ability to give birth, they just do it. And I told my husband I wanted to see if I could do it like a jungle lady. Like, I don't know why this was my thinking, but that's honestly what it was. It was, I wanted to see if I could do it like if I had to in the middle of the woods by myself give birth. And so I ran with it. And I know that birth can be dangerous and that many lives have been lost during labor and birth, which I kept that in mind. And I knew most importantly, above anything else, I just wanted to have a safe labor. And that's why I chose to still give birth at a hospital instead of a birthing center or at home. It was my first child, so I didn't know what was going to happen or what it would be like. And I wanted to make sure that if for any reason at all I needed help or in case of an emergency, that I was in a hospital setting. My ideal labor plan was to labor in a tub and get out to push. And my reason for wanting to labor in the tub but getting out of the water to push was because when you're in labor, your body naturally makes this lubricant. It's like a thick lube that helps to slip the baby out. And when you're in water, the resistance is a lot stronger because that lube is diluted. So I didn't want that. So originally, that was the plan, but I didn't end up using water at all. So yeah, but I just wanted to keep that in there just in case you are considering a water birth. You might want to know that. The tools I had in my toolbox for natural labor were the natural hormones the body makes during that time, and I wanted to go over a few before I jump into my story. So, oxytocin stimulates powerful contractions that help dilate the cervix, move the baby down and out of the birth canal, and push the placenta out and limit bleeding at the placenta site. So, during labor, the pressure of the baby against your cervix and pelvic floor stimulates that hormone. And another hormone that's helpful during labor is endorphins. When you face stress or pain, the body produces a calming, pain relieving hormone called endorphins. And for women who don't use pain medication during labor, the level of endorphins continues to rise steadily and steeply through the birth of the baby. Also, studies have found a sharp drop in endorphins with the use of epidural or opioid pain medication. So that's just something interesting to note. I'm going to jump into my birth story now. But yeah, guys. So at 11 p.m. on my due date, I got period-like cramps. They weren't like very intense, but they definitely were noticeable. And my water didn't break. I didn't pass the mucus plug, so I waited it out. And at around 1 a.m., I knew that it was contractions and not just cramps. So I prepared to just labor like at home till they got more intense. And then at around 3:30 a.m., we went to the hospital and they said I was only 3 centimeters dilated, so I wasn't considered active labor yet. And my doctor asked that I walk around to see if they would progress, like while I was still at the hospital, so I didn't have to go home. So I walked around the hospital halls and empty cafeteria. And I mean, this whole hospital was shut down. It was like so dark downstairs. I'll insert a little video of that right now so you guys can see, because I don't have very much footage, but I do have this video of me walking in the dark hospital. My husband saying like, "Are you about to have a contraction?" And I'm just like, "Yes, it's about to go down." So let me insert that real quick.
Are you having a contraction, babe?
I'm about to.
Okay.
Let's get down. So at around 5 a.m., they checked again, and I was still 3 centimeters. So they sent me home and told me to try to rest and shower and just try to relax. So I tried my best to sleep through the contractions and clean up. And like at around 2 p.m. the next day, they were close together and very intense. My body was telling me it was time to go back, so we did. And I was 6 centimeters dilated at around 6:45 p.m. So they checked me in and moved me to the delivery room. And my water still hadn't broke at this point. I then had them put my IV in my arm just in case I needed like any fluids or anything at all. I wanted the IV to already be in there. I refused any pain medication or epidural at this point. The pain was manageable for me. So at that point, my husband helped me work through the contractions by holding all my weight on his shoulders. And we like rocked side to side, almost like slow dancing. But all my weight was like on his shoulders. So I was just like this heavy person hanging on, rocking side to side. And that's how I got through the contractions at that point. We did this for what seemed like forever. And we did that off and on as the contractions hit. So they checked me frequently to see how much I was dilating. And at around 6:30 p.m., I was 7.5 centimeters dilated. And the doctor insisted that I allow them to pop my water manually in hopes that labor would progress faster. I knew that my baby could safely be delivered inside the sac. If needed, it's completely possible and happens. And I didn't want to pop my water at this point because once your water pops, getting the baby out as soon as possible is like vital. And I wanted my body to work that out as long as it could. So I declined and I continued to work through the contractions for like 4 more hours. I was exhausted, but I tried to bounce on the ball for a bit and it helped some. At this point in labor, I was loudly humming and I just naturally did that instead of screaming. I don't know why. It was the weirdest sound that ever came out of my body. I couldn't even duplicate it if I tried, but that was how I was getting through the contractions, is I was like humming and swaying back and forth. And I should add that I did not take classes for breathing before, but I later found out that humming is actually the best way to do things instead of screaming, because the vibrations help move the baby into the canal. Anyways, the doctor came back in at around 10:45 p.m. and still no water break, and I had only contracted to 8.5 centimeters, so I still had 1.5 centimeters to go. And the doctor then asked me again to pop my water, and I said no thank you. At this point, the pain was out of this world, and I was basically like leaving my body in order to cope. And I don't mean that, like, I'm not kidding. Dead serious. The contractions were very close together, minutes apart, so in between each, there was very little time for me to rest. And I just remember I didn't want to be touched by anyone. I told my husband to just sit down and like my body needed to zone the hell out. So I held onto the sink of the hospital and put my weight on it while I worked through the contractions. And at this point, they were very, very close together and so painful. It literally felt like my body, like my back and my stomach were like ripping open. And I'm just being fully honest. I had intended to try all these different positions to work through contractions, but when active labor is happening, it's really hard to even think clearly. And for me, at least, I just had to trust my body and it just needed to stand and sway. So that's what I did. And from 8.5 centimeters to 9.5 centimeters, I was just literally in a trance. I naturally just very loudly hummed. I didn't scream, but I was humming as loud as a scream. If you could imagine what that sounds like. It was so odd. And my husband just looked like he was seeing a ghost. Like he was so like freaked out by these sounds I was making. Later he was just like, that was so creepy. But funny. Like he thought it was beautiful, but also very terrifying. The doctor came back in every so often to check and the baby, like on the baby's heart and stuff. And then at around 1 a.m., she said, you're at 9.5 centimeters. That's at 1 a.m. So I've been in labor for a very long time at this point. I still refused to have them pop my water, and I think I was just being stubborn at this point. I wish I would have done it sooner, but she came back in at around 2:50 a.m., and she checked, and she said, okay, you're still at 9.5 centimeters. And then I was like, let's pop this water and get this baby out. Like, I was exhausted. I was just like, the contractions were so rapidly coming on. I just like could not take it no more. So I was like, pop this water. I knew I only had 0.5 centimeter, so I didn't feel like that was enough to like risk popping it and not being able to get the baby out. So she popped my water and almost immediately I contracted to 10 centimeters. And she said, like, she didn't even leave the area. She popped it and then like minutes went by and she's like, okay, it's time to push. And I remember feeling so emotional, like a strong, invincible almost. It was so weird. Like hearing her say it was time to push, it gave me so much momentum back. And I gave one big push and she said her head's out and she said, take a deep breath and give me another big push. And this one's going to hurt. It's her shoulders. So I did. And the doctor looked very surprised. I don't know why, but she did. And she just looked at me so intensely and said, one more big push. I need one more big one. And I just took her eyes for serious. Like she looked so serious. And so I pushed with every bit of my soul. And she said, good job, mama. And my husband was crying and the doctor said, her shoulders are out. Then they asked if I wanted to pull her out and I had no energy. I had no energy left to reach out, like reach up and pull her out. So my husband did. And then she wasn't crying at first, like the first seconds that she was out, and it scared me to death. And I just naturally said, like, baby girl, let's hear you. And then she loudly started crying. and they handed her to me to put her on my chest, and she peed all over me. Like literally she marked her territory. And that made us all laugh. And then I had to give birth to the placenta, which is such a weird feeling, so weird. It literally feels like you're pushing a brain out of you. It's the weirdest thing. And if you have like no medication, you feel everything. So it was odd, and it was like a warm, gooey blob. And sorry for the TMI, but also I should add that I asked for the delay in my cord clamping. So I was granted that before my husband cut the cord. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You can just like search them. I didn't actually write those down to like add to this, but that was just something I really wanted. Anyway, then they weighed my daughter, and the nurse laughed and said, "Oh my goodness, she's 9 pounds." I was like, no way. I literally thought she was joking. And she was 21 inches long. I didn't tear though enough to get stitches in my labor. So I didn't tear, I didn't need stitches. And I personally credit that to the fact that my body was able to make so much of that lubricant, and the baby just slipped out. But honestly, I'm just assuming that could have nothing to do with it. But my child was in the 100 percentile, like huge ass baby. And yeah, but she continued to stay in the 100 percentile and still is. So she's very tall, and just like she's always been that way. Postpartum is very, very painful, and it is definitely like something a lot of people should talk about. So I could do another episode or video about that, because I had these few tricks that literally saved my vagina, and I mean seriously life-saving. And I've given these tricks to some of my friends and family that have had babies after me, and they're like, thank you so much. Like, and even friends that like had babies before and didn't do these tricks. So I definitely want to share those with you guys, because I know a lot of my friends are pregnant right now, and people who might be listening to this. So yeah, I will definitely share those regardless if I make a postpartum video. But I think I should make one, because postpartum is a whole nother ball game, and wild. It's just as wild as birth. So yeah, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this episode.